My name is Erica Harold, and I'm the Commission's Executive Director. I now have the privilege of welcoming to the Future is Now stage for a virtual fireside chat, Tiffany Graves. Tiffany is an accomplished attorney, former nonprofit executive, and dynamic leader who currently serves as National Pro Bono Counsel for Bradley Arent Bolt and Cummings LLP across its 13 offices. The breadth of her experiences has given Tiffany unique insights into client-centered lawyering, and the compelling way that she communicates has made her a much sought-after speaker across the country. We're delighted to have Tiffany with us today, so please make sure to put any questions that you may have for her in the Q&A section of the chat. Welcome, Tiffany.
Much, Erica. I'm thrilled to be here and honored by the invitation to share some remarks with everyone today.
Well, let's start out right at the top. At a very high level, what is client-centered lawyering?
To me, client-centered lawyering is engaging with your clients in a way that puts their experience at the center. It is acknowledging that our clients are humans and that they come to us having had very different experiences that have led them to have very different expectations of what we can and will do for them. And lawyers and law firms that are client-centered are always considering how the needs of their clients and their firms overlap. And how both of those needs can be met in ways that ensure the most positive experiences for everyone. I think it also means lawyering that goes beyond simply understanding your client's issue. It requires taking the time to really understand the client's underlying objectives, concerns, tolerance for risks, and personalizing your services in a way that makes your client one for life.
So, how would you distinguish it from other approaches to lawyering? What are some ways in which it's different from ways in which lawyers might otherwise be lawyering?
I think it's a different approach because it really does focus on the client's experience more than anything, and not just on the delivery of services, what that legal deliverable is going to be. It forces lawyers to really think about how ensuring positive experiences throughout their representation can lead to deeper relationships with their existing clients, but also increased potential for new clients and greater profitability for the lawyer and the law firm. When we're more attuned to our clients' needs, I think we can more easily give them the effortless experience that we want them to have as lawyers, frankly, and that they're also used to having in other aspects of their lives.
Now, I know that your perspectives on client-centered lawyering have really been informed in large part by your work in pro bono. Although our discussion today will be focusing on all practice types and settings, I'd really love for our attendees to get a sense of your background and experience. Could you describe a few of the key roles that you've had in the pro bono space?
Yes. Well, as you shared in my introduction, I'm currently pro bono counsel at Bradley, a position that I've held since about 2018. Prior to joining Bradley, I had executive director positions at the Mississippi Volunteer Lawyers Project and the Mississippi Access to Justice Commission. Spent several years in private practice before transitioning to public interest. And while I was in private practice, always maintained a pretty heavy pro bono caseload. It was just always very important for me to do that.
Since this is a fireside chat, I have to ask, what fueled your passion for pro bono?
You know, I'm one of those, and a lot of us say this, and it sort of becomes cliche at some point, but I really did go to law school to help people. That was my aim. I knew that I wanted to use my legal education in a way that would provide resources and supports to people who would not otherwise be able to access lawyers and law firms. And I was very fortunate to, go to a law school that provided opportunities to take clinical courses and engage in activities that really allowed me to sort of flex that pro bono muscle. And all of those opportunities really fueled my passion for pro bono and fueled my desire to ground my career and work on behalf of the most vulnerable and maligned members of our communities.
Well, in working with pro bono, what did you learn about approaching legal services from a client's perspective?
In my view, the only way to be an effective pro bono lawyer is to be client centered. So I think even before I had a sense of what that concept was, it was something that I was learning to do as I was representing clients pro bono. Pro bono clients are coming to us as pro bono lawyers without the backing of a large corporation or bank accounts that suggest they could otherwise afford your services. They are truly relying on lawyers really to put their needs at the center because they don't have anyone else who is, or the ability to access services in any other way. And they're looking to you for compassion and care and empathy and all those things because they have nowhere else to turn. And frankly, if they've tried to turn other places, they've probably been turned away. So I think as a pro bono attorney, you learn pretty quickly that your client's needs have to be at the center of everything you do.
We have a great question from one of our attendees, and he wants to know what specific questions or prompts in an intake process have you found most effective at signaling empathy and building rapport before the first meeting? That's from Thomas Valenti, who it's almost like he had a copy of my notes. So thank you for that, Thomas. So, what are the specific questions or prompts during that intake process that actually signals the traits that you just described?
I think Thomas was sitting in on our prep call. A really great question. It really is. And I think what it suggests more than anything is an acknowledgement that this really does start at the intake process. It starts with getting to know your client and being comfortable with maybe going off script a little bit in terms of what you have the question. There's certain things that you need to collect when you're doing an intake, for sure. But really allowing it to be a conversation. People are coming to us at challenging times with big problems, and they're looking to us for empathy. So I think throughout that intake process, and frankly throughout the representation, it's so important to bear that in mind and to use acknowledgments that you are listening and understanding. As lawyers and as problem solvers, our default is I'm listening, but I'm also thinking about how I can solve your problem as I'm listening to you. And we have to understand that people can tell when we're not really listening to them, and we're already sort of going into that problem solving mode. So I think it's making it as conversational as it can be, and it's parroting back. Okay, I heard you say.
Mhm.
Is my understanding of that correct? Those sorts of things. Allowing people moments when they need to sort of take a pause because something may be very difficult for them to express to you or share with you. It's treating humans like humans. And again, I know that there are things that we want to accomplish when we're doing our intakes, but I think it's just important to take off our lawyer armor and have conversations with people as people. And it's amazing the information that we can collect if we're just not sort of sticking to whatever script we have in front of us.
Well, I want to piggyback off of Thomas's question. There may be attendees who are listening and say, empathy and being a good listener, those sound like great traits, but I'm not good at those things.
Yeah.
What are some specific ways that lawyers can cultivate or build upon those skills if they don't feel that they come naturally or intuitively to them?
And it's true. We are all trained in different ways. We learn from people who may not, sort of exhibit the most empathetic qualities and those sorts of things. So it's a really good question. Again, I think it all goes back to at the end of the day, even if you're dealing with the general counsel of a corporation, you're dealing with an individual, you're dealing with another human. Actively listening again, parroting back what someone has asked you, or shared with you to make sure that that they understand that you understand what they're trying to explain to you or what they may be asking you. Those are the types of things. I also think finding people within your firms or within the legal community who have a reputation for compassion. Our legal aid organization attorneys certainly come to mind because they are dealing with people who are some of the most vulnerable in our communities. Go meet with these individuals, sit in on some of their intakes and interviews. You can learn a lot from people who engage with folks who are not necessarily working with big corporations or have the same level of legal savvy as maybe other clients that you deal with. So seek out people who can really help you develop those skills and translate them into the work that you do at your law firm or organization.
A lot of our attendees will represent individuals, but then some represent corporations or organizations. How can they apply some of the things we've been talking about to their practice when they're representing organizational clients?
Yeah. And I work at a firm where we have primarily organizational clients. So I can certainly understand that. And I think it goes back to what I said just a few minutes ago. When you are representing a corporation, you're not representing some bricks and mortar building. You are working with a corporate representative, be it a general counsel or someone else who is associated with that organization, with that company. And that is another human being. And they're coming into that representation with certain expectations, either based on how you have dealt with them in the past or what they have experienced from other lawyers and law firms. I think it's important to treat them like you would an individual client. Get a sense for what their expectations are of your representation, especially if it's a new person that you're dealing with and a new client. And because it's very easy for them to take their business elsewhere. If they are, engaging with other firms or have had experiences that are vastly different, negatively so, from what you are giving them. So, when they're a new person, have the conversations about their expectations, making sure that you are both on the same page about how they want to be invoiced and what their expectations are in terms of communication and those sorts of things. And then follow those expectations to the greatest extent possible. There's nothing worse than someone telling you what they want and then you doing the complete opposite. So I think it's important to not only ask for that feedback in developing and deepening those relationships with corporate clients, but also following through on the things that they request to make that representation positive for both of you.
I want to ask another question about the intake process because you talked about that as a really formative opportunity to be able to start to build upon this. And one of our attendees, Cordelia Coppelson, has another question about that intake. How do you prepare your clients for the stress and trauma of litigation, especially if it's going to be ongoing or lengthy?
What I have done, I'm a litigator. When I was in private practice, that's what I did: products liability. I did labor and employment work and insurance defense. And in all of those instances, particularly when I was dealing with sort of a newer client, I would be very open about the challenges of litigation. How we don't know how things are going to go, and sometimes things happen unexpectedly. But what I would always try to do is reassure them that I am on this journey with you. Together we are going to make sure that you are heard, you are seen, your experiences are felt in whatever situation we might be in together. And that helped sort of relieve, not completely, because it is stressful. I mean, I think you have to acknowledge that it is stressful. No one
Absolutely.
wants to be in a lawsuit. No one wants to have to engage with courts. So I think you start off by acknowledging this is not a great situation. But reassure your client that you are going to be with them every step of the way, that you're going to communicate with them. And I think seeing that compassion, seeing that empathy, seeing that acknowledgement that, someone is going to be there with me throughout this process tends to make people feel better, even in the most challenging moments and times of litigation in particular.
Well, I know that there are probably some people listening who say, this sounds great, But this takes a lot of time. And lawyers are often criticized in seemingly contradictory ways. On one hand, lawyers are sometimes criticized for taking too long with the matter or having a bill that's too high. How do you balance that need for efficiency and moving things forward with allowing people to be heard and to feel heard and to building that rapport?
It's a great question, and it's a legitimate one, because you hear all this and you think, well, that sounds great, Tiffany and Erica, but how much time am I devoting to really get at the heart of what my client needs? So I understand that, and I think it really requires us to see. Allowing our clients to feel heard and seen in the representation as essential components of the representation, and not just things that are wasting time or inefficient, but as part of it, as an investment in them and in the representation. And I think if you're doing it right and really making it a part of the culture of your law firm and just how you operate as a lawyer, then you really shouldn't have to devote a significant amount of time. And like anything, it takes practice, it takes getting comfortable with engaging with people in this way. But I think it's worth that investment. It's worth that time. And when you make the time to do it, to invest in your clients' needs and really meaningfully engage with them in the process, you're really helping to ensure that they have a positive experience, which can lead to continued business and their referrals to others. So I think you have to see in a sense, the long game.
Mm-hmm.
That it's worth making this investment in your clients because it can really lead to increased opportunities to develop new business, and really deepened relationships with your existing clients.
I want to piggyback off of what you just talked about, sort of the culture that's created. Because one of our attendees asked a really thought-provoking question, and it gets to that sort of how do you find out what a culture of a firm truly is? So Gina Alexandra said, if this is a value and focus that lawyers want to engage in professionally, what questions in a meeting or interview with an organization or firm can really clarify whether these are shared values? So if you're the lawyer and you say this is the approach I want to reflect with my clients,
Mhm.
what are questions when you're sort of interviewing the firm as a lawyer can you ask to make sure that there's a match, so that you're able to have an alignment in how you want to practice law and how you want to serve clients?
Oh, that's a great question and is indeed thought provoking. I think one of the big questions is, one of the things I think lawyers get, kind of nailed with a lot is that we're not good communicators. I mean, we're good communicators, but with our clients, the track record is not the best. And I think you can look at the Bar Association records for any state in this nation, and you will consistently see that lawyers, track record of communicating with clients is just not the best. So I think one of the things you would definitely want to ask about is just how you, as a law firm, how do you communicate with your clients? What are your expectations of how your lawyers engage with clients? Because that's such a big one, and one that we, like I said, as a profession, get dinged by so often. I mean, I wouldn't be a pro bono counsel if I didn't say another question is just sort of core values in terms of commitment to community and service. I think how law firms respond to that question can be very revealing about just how they see themselves in the world, as citizens of whatever locality they may be in, the state, the nation. I think that's another important question. Just what are what do they lawyers enjoy most about being at the firm? What do they see? What do they hear from their lawyers as a positive thing about working at the firm and engaging with others? I love the idea, frankly, of clients being more in the driver's seat and asking these types of questions. I think it's important. You can't rely just on what's on a website or social media platforms about a law firm. Ask the questions. You're investing time, you're investing a lot of energy, in many cases, a lot of money into working with these firms. So I think it is important to get a sense of what sort of firm you're actually going to be dealing with.
And another kind of tricky quandary that attorneys find themselves in that I think could really come up in client-centered lawyering. How should a lawyer handle a situation when the client wants to pursue a course of action that the lawyer believes to be unwise, unethical, or otherwise not in the client's best interest? What do they do in a situation like that while still being client-centered?
Well, I'll say this, putting clients at the center just certainly doesn't mean putting your ethics at the door. Um,
Perfectly said there.
And I'm certainly not going to sit here in a fireside chat with the executive director of the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism and say that we should do whatever our clients want us to do, even when we know what they're asking is unethical, illegal, or anything of that ilk. I think if your client insists on a course, a direction with which you don't feel comfortable, or certainly is unethical or not something that the rules allow in any way, you do have to consider withdrawing from the representation and having that very honest conversation with your client about how you cannot pursue that course of action. And otherwise looking for ways to disengage from that representation. We never want to put ourselves in a situation where we jeopardize our status as a lawyer to go along with what our clients want. And I certainly don't think client-centered lawyering expects that from us either.
That was perfect. We did not rehearse that. That may have been my favorite answer you've given thus far, Tiffany, although you've given a lot of great ones. And I told you our attendees have fantastic questions. So I want to turn to another one. This is from Miles Bardell. And I apologize in advance if I am butchering people's names, but I want to kind of highlight the great questions and attendees that we have here. Miles wants to know, what practices can we implement as more experienced attorneys to find opportunities to model these excellent client communication practices to younger attorneys, interns, and law students? In other words, how can more experienced lawyers lead by example?
Oh, such a great question. Such a great question. I fancy myself somewhat experienced. I'm 20 years out almost at this point, and am always looking for opportunities to engage with younger lawyers because that's what we should be doing. And they really are watching us. Just this morning, I was at an eviction clinic at one of the courthouses here in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Mecklenburg County. And I went with two of our associates who are new to the firm and new to, pro bono experiences. And they're both litigation associates, and we're really interested in getting involved in this particular clinic. The housing issue is, something we're challenged with in a lot of communities, but it's certainly true here in Charlotte. So it's their first time, going into an eviction court and seeing all these individuals who are facing homelessness in some instances, or just the challenge of finding somewhere else to live. That was an opportunity for me and the other more seasoned lawyers who were there to kind of, shepherd along these young associates to show them things like empathy. You've got people who are in some of the darkest times of their lives. Not only will they potentially be put out of their homes, but their children will as well. So everybody's got to figure out what that means. So practicing empathy, compassion. We had to listen to our clients and really get a sense of, here's why I'm in this situation. This is not what I wanted for me. This is not what I wanted for my family. But here we are. And I need your help trying to figure out how to navigate this system and navigate this situation. So it was just a really wonderful opportunity to sit down with those lawyers and together, hear our clients, empathize with our clients, and then strategize with our clients about how we could make this situation a little bit better for them in the moment. So I think looking for those opportunities, and there's so many that we as more experienced lawyers can really impart to newer lawyers and younger lawyers who need to develop these skills and can learn from us about how to do that.
So it sounds like intentionality is core. It's not something that you can just hope happens organically. On some level, it will, but there has to be that proactive search for how do I lead by example? What are those opportunities? I want to
Absolutely.
switch topics a little bit because one of the things that you and I discussed before that was fascinating to me were some of the practical ways that attorneys and firms could get feedback from their clients about how to improve upon the relationship and how to sort of improve the processes going forward. What would be some of the specific things that you've seen that are really helpful and useful in getting that feedback and then actually applying it to improve processes going forward?
Yes. It's as simple as you don't know the answer if you don't ask the question. And I
Right.
think we often assume, particularly if we get positive results for our clients, that they're happy, they're
Mm.
satisfied. I got them a positive result. But that assumption may not be correct. They may be happy with the result, but they may not be happy with what happened to get there
Right.
in terms of how you were communicating with them or otherwise engaging with them throughout the representation. So I think it's critical, especially as you potentially make this shift to become more client centered, to actually ask your clients what they expected. Did we meet those expectations? And it's more than just a check off yes or no, but really getting to the heart of the experience from the intake to the invoicing. And to be
Eye
prepared,
to eye.
and to be prepared for criticism. Don't go into it thinking you're only going to hear good things. And in fact, you really want the criticism because those are
Right.
the things that you can take to improve your systems, your processes as a lawyer, as a law firm. So I think it's not something to be bashful about, but to really embrace. To those clients you have great relationships with, to easily have those conversations. But even the new folks or the folks that don't, who you assume would come back for more business, but you've not heard anything from them, to have that conversation about, I just want to know what your thoughts were about how my firm, engaged with you. As a client, we're always looking to improve. We want to improve. We want to make sure the experience that our clients are having are positive ones. Please give me that feedback. We need it. We want it. And we want to use it in ways that are going to improve how we do what we do. Focus groups are another way that can be really effective. They can be facilitated by others or they can be facilitated by people within your firm. But I think you really should not be afraid to ask the question, understanding that you may get information that is not positive, but it is positive in the sense that it gives you the information you need to make things better.
Would you recommend asking some of these questions while the relationship is ongoing? So while the transaction's happening, while the case is going forward, or do you wait until the end?
I think you do it while it's going on.
Okay.
It makes sense to do so. I mean, you don't want to do it in a way that's sort of clunky or just feels forced or, awkward. But I think where you can find those moments to say, this is a system we put in place or a protocol, or this is kind of how we do this. It's a new thing. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Or we're thinking about making some tweaks to this way we do something. I would love to hear, how you're going through it in real time and what your feelings might be about it. So I think look for those opportunities during the representation to ask those questions. But I also think waiting until the end is also okay. But as opportunities present themselves and feel sort of natural and not strange, take advantage of them. Gather that information in real time and make the necessary adjustments as you're going along.
And so asking for feedback in both a verbal way and written way or digital way, you think those are all appropriate ways of getting that feedback?
I do. I mean, think about so many other aspects of our lives. You're reviewing things on Amazon. You've gone to this restaurant. You're yourself looking for reviews and what other people had to say about it. So many other aspects of our lives. This is just what we do, what we're used to. I don't think that we should treat law and what we do with our clients is any different. The information that services that we use, products that we use, the information that those companies get from us, they use to improve their products and improve their services. We should be doing the same thing as lawyers and law firms.
Well, we have about 2 to 3 minutes left with our time. I wish we had a lot more time with you, but I wanted to ask you what felt like a good concluding fireside chat question. Of course, without disclosing any confidential information, is there a specific client that you were able to help using this approach that stands out as particularly meaningful to you?
Yes. So in our Birmingham and Nashville offices, we do clinics to support small business owners and nonprofit leaders with a variety of business related legal needs. The first clinic launched during the pandemic in our Nashville office in 2021. And as a firm, we were really proud to launch this clinic. And about a year or so into it, we were feeling good about how things were going. And I think making some assumptions that it had been a positive experience for our clients because it had been a positive experience for us as lawyers. But it occurred to us that maybe we ought to check in with the clients to make sure that it actually is going as well as we think it is. So we had a focus group. We invited several of the clients who participated in the clinic to talk with us virtually about their experiences, good, bad, and otherwise, as a way for us to really, make the necessary improvements to the clinic. And the first few questions brought back so many glowing and positive and complimentary things that we thought we knew it. We hit the mark with this one. And then we asked the question about what clients expected when they came to the clinic and whether or not those expectations were met and how so. And then there was a shift in the positivity of some of those comments. And it was revealing and it was extremely helpful. And after I and several of us took a couple of days to process some of it,
Right.
we went to work to make those improvements. And I think that's what makes all the difference in the world is even when you do get those comments that are just like, wow, I didn't really realize people were having that sort of experience, taking that and intentionally going back to what you said, this really takes intentionality. It takes you recognizing that this aspect of what we're doing is not working. So we need to make those adjustments. And in the end, for the clinic, it has meant increased participation, increased positive regard for this pro bono initiative among the entrepreneurship community in Nashville. And really, for us, a better feeling that what we're doing really is having the impact that we intended.
Well, Tiffany, that was the perfect answer for putting the application and tying it all up for our attendees. I want to thank you so much for your generosity of time and spirit in being here with us and helping us to kick off this conference with such refreshing and helpful insights. Truly, thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to have you.